You're in for a real treat on this interview with Janell. This is the second in a series, and in this one here, I ask her questions about how to raise your vibration and be in a love state. And we also look at how to raise your vibration for inner peace. So those are two big pieces that we look at, and she answers. Also, I ask her about clearing your emotional blocks and expanding your emotional and energetic bandwidth. Those are just 3 things we go over, but there's a whole lot more, so stick around and enjoy this video. You started getting into what I was going to go to, and that was the other side of the coin, instead of all the fear-based ones and shame and guilt and blame and all that. And you started going into what I was going to go into, and that was how to get to these higher vibrations of love, for instance. So I want to look at love and talk about that. Not necessarily romantic love, but that's part of it, but just love in general, the concept of it. And it's so powerful. It's a state like when you are in love, when you love what you're doing, that type of thing, you are really in a high vibe state. It's very positive. However, the stuff I've read and looked at is most people are not in that state. The majority of the time they're in some kind of a fear-based state, unfortunately. So if you could talk about how do you get in a love-based vibration, emotional state, and then what do you do to kind of maintain that or stay in that?
That's a good thought there. Good question. Again, you're great questions. So to be in a high vibe love state, I want to talk about love because I went through this. I had the understanding, well, what is love? What does that even feel like? What's that look like? What's the high vibe? What's it feel like? And before we experience it, it's hard to really wrap your mind around. And we have a lot of social beliefs, and we've been taught this is love. And I recognized in myself that there's some of the religious teaching that I grew up in that this is, God is love. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's the purest source of love is divine love. And however you want to, word that is, really is a personal thing. But for me, that's how I'm connecting that ultimate source of love, pure love. The part I needed to sort through and understand was that there was a lot of guilt around, well, there's this love and you got to be that. Well, you're looking at yourself and like, but I'm not. Or, you strive and you try and there's a lot of rules that you got to start to follow. And all of a sudden, I found myself in a cage of guilt and shame. So it was the opposite. So I'm striving to be this thing up here. This is what I'm striving for. But what it created for me was more guilt and shame, which is back down into the basement of energy, vibration, right? And there I am. So I decided to change that. Let's take a new look at how this can look. And I'm seeing that it's about the vibration of love is about reconnecting authentically and being okay with who you are. Being okay with that authentic you and all that's vulnerable. Because the more authentic you reach that you get, the more vulnerable you are. Because now if something is said, that it really is you. There's no screens, there's no walls that are like, yeah, you can say all you want, but that isn't me anyway, so whatever, right? But the more vulnerable you get, the more authentic you get, I guess, is the more vulnerable you are. And being able to work through the blocks, the trauma, the different experiences and heal and bring healing. So releasing the blocks and bringing healing to the body and to the energetic body. Then you're connecting to that authenticness of you, that real you. And as you do that, then you start hearing what you really need. That's love. Because I can reach out to a good friend. I can reach out to you from the authenticness of me. And now I'm expressing I'm high vibing, because this is the high vibe place. Well, what's high vibe? Love.
Love. And genuine.
And genuine love. And then when we're tapping into that divine love source, I'm not in this cage of rules to get there. I'm just allowed to let it be through me. Yeah. And I'm comfortable with it, and I'm comfortable with me. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A lot of the stuff I've studied, they always talk about embody it. Like don't just think about happiness or study happiness, actually be happiness. And so in this case here, what you're saying is just be love. Just let it envelop you and just let it be who you are.
Yeah, so. When people hit a wall and think, oh, I just can't, instead of having the guilt and shame thing, which I was experiencing, it's take a look at, okay, honor and get curious. Honor, okay, body, okay, self. What's that about? Let's look at this together. It's a self-love moment. And I really feel that love at its highest vibe is about and involving self-love. I think that opens the door to that.
Yeah.
True love.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know, if this is resonating with you and you want to work with Janell, she has courses. She works with people one-on-one in small groups, does lots of different things. We will put those links in this video here below. So if any of this is like, man, I want to get into a love state, or I want to raise my vibration, or if any of the stories she's talked about you've been just like, wow, that's me. I resonate with that. That's going on in my life. I want to make a change. Join her in her courses. We'll put the links in there because I highly recommend it. I've used some of the stuff myself and it's been extremely beneficial for me. I look at myself over the last few years and the involvement and the work with Janell has been tremendous. Just overcoming blocks, things that she talks to me a lot about. Flow, like you want to have flow. And whenever you have a block, that's going to stop you. Just think of a river and a dam blocking it up, and that flow, getting that block out of there, has just been crucial. So if any of this does resonate with you, click the links and look her up. You will definitely be glad you did that. All right, I want to go to the next question here, and that is on inner peace. Just like with love, we all know that inner peace and feeling calm and tranquil and centered is really important. But for so many of us, it's a state of vibration that we don't get to. Someone cuts us off when we're driving, or we get a bad grade or a bad review from our supervisor, or we don't make the sale, or whatever it is. Something on the external hits us and gets us out of that inner peace. And so I would like it if you could talk a little bit about how do we get to that state of inner peace, because the whole point of this video is about happiness and fulfillment, and it's all about your emotions. And so if you can raise your vibration, get into that inner peace, everything is going to flow better. Everything's going to work better.
Yeah, and I think the answer was in the question where you say, let's get the blocks out. Because what we're doing is we're giving ourselves more bandwidth. And we think, man, I want to be in that inner peace, dang it. Bleep, bleep, bleep. And so you go and you try, you do your thing, and then something happens. You're like, yeah, seriously, I was almost there. Not that I've ever experienced that. Yeah, right. So I think it's all about giving yourself more bandwidth. And the way we give ourselves more emotional and energetic bandwidth is by clearing up the blocks that are stopping the flow. Because peace is inside. It's when we connect deep inside. What is the counter of peace? Well, it's when we're in our heads and we are going how many thoughts a second? Bam, 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 bam. That generates, on the physical side, that generates electricity, because our brain is an electrical factory with all the neuro connections and communication in there. It's an electrical factory, and we just run our brains on hyperdrive, right? And then that affects and just is a domino throughout our whole body, and it affects it chemically and everything. And so that puts us in a, if you will, more of a fight and flight mode. So here we are. And so, I mean, I just won't go into that because I'll get off in the weeds, guys, if I start talking about the physical effects here. It's not inner peace. So letting the brain take a back seat for a little bit, letting everything that we do get put in a folder and say, yes, we will talk to you later. We will talk to you at this time. We will address this at this time. Set a time, put it on your calendar, whatever you need to. You will go back there. But for right now, I have nothing to solve. For right now, this moment I'm sitting in right now, it's just okay to be. So let yourself drop out of your head and down into your heart, because where your heart is, there's truly peace. And the only thing that will keep us from finding that are the blocks. These blocks are highly influential in our well-being. So heal the blocks, remove the blocks. And like you mentioned, thank you for those nice words about working with me in the program. So what are your blocks? They're individually yours. How do they want to be seen? How do they want to come out? How do they, what's the process? It's individual. What's best is very individual. We can't just say, oh, here's your cookie cutter. There you go. But the principle is that block energetic, emotional trauma, and the blocks and the way they stop flow within our body, and the way that they separate us from our intuition, our heart space, our inner self, our truest self, all of those go together, and those blocks keep us from it. So really, to get to that inner peace is about the healing. Yeah.
Thank you. I got a challenge for everyone. If you've liked it and you're kind of connecting with it and that, what I want you to do is take this challenge. And the challenge is notice what state you're in. Just notice it. So if you're in an angry state or fearful state or shame and guilt, just notice it. And then the second thing I'd like you to do is say, what is the payoff or what's the benefit I'm getting for this? And I think what you're going to notice is that you're going to have some kind of a benefit. Janell mentioned some of them. Maybe it's avoiding responsibility. Maybe it's shifting blame to someone else, and you can feel like you're, just the innocent person. It had nothing to do. There's going to be some kind of benefit. But what I want to challenge you is that instead of getting that small benefit, instead of getting pennies, think about what would my life be like if I could substitute that out for inner peace or love, two of the things we talked about. Because if you could go there, you're going to take pennies and turn into $100 bill or $1,000 bill or who knows what, but it's going to have a significant difference. So that's the challenge for you, is to say, what feeling am I having? Just kind of notice it. Sometimes people will set their watch to go off at different times. And then what they'll do is just kind of notice or write down what feeling they're having. And then just being that aware, because that awareness and that observation is key, because you can't change what you don't know. So that's the first thing. And then just notice it and then say, what is the payoff? And there's always an opportunity cost. When I went to college in an economics class, they said, if you buy this car, you're not going to get this truck or something else. There's some kind of cost if you have X amount of dollars. So you have X amount of time in a day. And so if you're spending it in low vibes, what is the cost that you could be doing? What's the opportunities that are out there that you could be pursuing? So just kind of look at that, because once you start shifting your mind away from what you don't want and towards what you do want, it's that simple. It's that simple. We don't have to make it complicated, and you will start noticing changes. And it doesn't have to be like dramatic, but just slowly over time, you go where your focus is. Next, what I want to do you have any comments on that, or?
I just agree.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, what I want to do is we have some questions that are just kind of random questions, but they're on this topic. And if you don't mind, I'll just kind of read them because they were given to me. Okay. So the first one is on the lower vibration to the higher vibration. Okay. When you're at the lower, it is said that it is more dependent. And when you're at the higher, it's more freedom. Okay. Can you kind of explain that? Like, why is it the higher you go up, the freer you are, and the lower you go down, the more dependent you are?
Because in the lower vibe and the dependency vibe, I am looking for someone else to validate me. I am looking for something else to validate me, to help me feel better about the shame I'm carrying around or the guilt I'm carrying around. Or I'm afraid and I am stuck here. If I'm in high vibe, I'm really connected, like we've been talking about. I'm really connected to who I am. I am operating in my purpose. I am operating in my gifts. I'm empowered. And there's a freedom when I can work with you because I want to, not because I need to.
It's a choice then.
Yeah. And there's power and there's freedom in that. And then you can move on and make decisions based on that freedom that you have in being connected to you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And a kind of a related one that popped in my mind was if someone, you'd mentioned trauma, but if someone is injured or some kind of struggle they're trying to get overcome, and they're in a low vibe state versus if you're in a higher vibe state, in terms of your health, will you be healthier in a higher vibe state? And also, will you recover quicker?
Yeah, health is one of those interesting places. And anything that I'm saying is purely information. It's not diagnostic or something I'm saying you must follow, right? But it's information here.
And I do want to say emotional health. I
Okay,
meant emotional
okay,
health.
okay. Because it affects our physical health.
Well,
It
yeah, but I
can
was thinking
affect, but
emotional.
you're thinking emotion.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we always want to do that disclaimer when we start stepping across that into the physical body. Yeah, so so take me back to the emotional health. What's our question, Ron?
Well, because this whole topic is on your emotions and going from low vibe to high vibe and all this. And so
So am I healthier?
yeah, so I was just thinking you brought up the fact that people have trauma and
Yeah.
these kinds of things. So, and that's emotional. Like if someone was abused or something happened years ago, that now it's in a memory, it's an emotion, we're carrying that forward. And so
It can even be a trauma. There's the big traumas, what are classified big traumas, but also it can be big to the individual when it happens. So that still could be a trauma. I struggled with reading. I'm a dyslexic with an auditory processing disorder. And so reading in front of a classroom wasn't a trauma to most of the kids, but it sure as heck was a trauma to me, and that's been a big part of my healing process, was working through the fear, guilt, shame that was connected to those events in my life. And so being healthier, with a higher vibe we get, the healthier we are. You bet that has been my observation and personal experience. Because we're not taxing ourselves. If I'm in these low vibes, remember I said our central nervous system, our whole body is just in this state. We're burning a lot of energy doing that. And those chakras responsible for those feelings, for our stability, for this is who I am, and that is our digestion area in those lower chakras. And so what we are energetically influences who we are emotionally, so our emotional health, but physically it does. It can affect our physical body, which affects our emotional body, because they talk a lot about the gut brain connection. So there's that loop, there's that circle of influence. So am I functioning as well? So my immune system can be compromised? Am I producing the different hormones that are produced in the body, the digestion? Am I producing them in balance or in equal and proper amounts? It is possible that you're not, when we're in that lower vibration, because of the influence of that energy in our body, that low vibe. And there's a whole discussion and class that I do on that, because it's a big topic. Okay. But let's do the Cliff Note version.
Okay.
So, but the higher vibe we get, we are shifting how we think in that process, because we're taking a look, well, what belief is connected to that guilt, shame, fear? What's the belief? What happened to me? What belief did I adopt? So we're changing and shifting our mindset. We're growing in that area. And then the emotion is packed in that space based on the event. That's all packed in there, and that's starting to release and heal. So now, are we carrying that tension, that stress? Because every event, every emotion and memory of that event, when we think about it, it exposes our body to those emotions. And so, was it stressful at that time? You bet it was. And so our body's in this stressed mode, which zaps your energy, which zaps your immune system, which zaps, your basic well-being. So the healthier energetically we get, the healthier our mindset is, the healthier our emotions are, the more stable, the more vitality we feel, the more energy, my personal experience, and the more energy I have, the more bandwidth I have.
All right, excellent. The last question, and this one is a doozy, okay? We were mentioning this the other day, and it just blew my mind because I was like, I did not realize the value and the importance of that. And this is, we are taught a lot of times if we want to change something, we want to change our thoughts, right? There's been lots of books on that, lots of things, change your thoughts, change your world, all this. But there's something that's the precursor or even a stronger force than the thought. And it usually has lots of thoughts connected to this, and that's emotions or an emotion. So, can you talk about the power of how an emotion is so much stronger than a thought? Because when you went over that the other day, I mean, honestly, I was like, I had no idea how powerful that was because I know how powerful thoughts are, but I didn't realize that emotions are even more powerful and they're like thoughts on steroids, in terms of how it impacts you.
Yeah, because emotion is self-created energy. That's the definition I like to go with for emotion. It's self-created energy. I have an experience, and I used to show horses. I've been a trainer at one of the hats I've worn, and I would take kiddos, and myself, and we'd go to horse shows, and we just had a great time. And I was in a series, and I won that series. I had a horse that I had bought and trained like I did. I did that for business, and then I showed him, and he was just a great guy. And so this was his second year with me, and our second season in the show ring, and we won it all. And I can feel that when I remember, I can feel how proud I was of him. It moves me to this day, the emotion, the experience, and what it felt to just receive that trophy, to receive those buckles. And he was there. And it's going to make me cry right now because emotion is connected to the experience. And so all the aspects that our senses experience, so what we heard, smelled, saw, felt, is all there in that package. It's self-created energy. And so our thoughts and our emotion energy part of us work tight together. So if I bring back the memory in my mind, it brings the emotion in full flood into my entire body. It doesn't stay in our heads. Emotion opens up throughout our entire body. The reverse happens. We store emotion in my body. So every time I see a horse or I see a ribbon on, in my ribbon box, and it touches that emotion, I'm exploded again. I'm just filled with this emotion, and it brings back the thought. So it does work both ways, but it's the emotion part that has the impact that really influences our body. So if it's around a really, what we would say, good moment, like me and my horse, that moment is fantastic for me. But it's the same principle. So it's a principle. It's not if it's only what we would call good or we would call bad. Um, mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I did not realize how emotions and at least my understanding of it kind of trump thoughts, and then how you just explained how they interact and work together so well, so powerful.
Yeah, and influence each other. In a powerful way. And emotion can they collect. So if I win several shows in a row. So I have a whole, which I kind of do, but I have a whole box and whatever of these of events that have been good for me, and connected to the horses. And that emotion grows and it builds, so that increases its impact on us. But let's apply that to an event that would have been labeled trauma for me. So I'm in the classroom, and every day for how long, many years are we in school? And I didn't realize and get the tools that I have now that allow me to really maximize my gift as being a dyslexic. But back when I was a child, I had this many years of trauma and that memory and that emotional package accumulated, and they grow and become bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the coping skills that you put around that to move forward become, just like they become cages, but they're coping skills that are there to help you survive what seems like is surviving at the time. But that's all becomes an emotional block within our energy field. And that then is also called a trigger. So different things could happen. I could be called out on being wrong or being asked. It's not even being reading, but just called out, and it's like, well, you're wrong, and it feels a little bit personal. Then it hits this whole bundle of emotion. It had nothing to do with thought. It had everything to do with this pushing on this, and felt similar. Not being heard was one of them. I wasn't being heard. No one understood me. So if I wasn't understood in any other area, it took me a long time to figure that out. It was actually pushing this huge bundle of emotion, self-created energy. And then that would explode through my whole body, and I'd have this reaction and think, man, why am I reacting so big? Well, that's a trigger. That's an emotional block trigger.
Thank you, Janelle.
Yeah.
Thank you for all this. I appreciate you, Janelle, for being here and getting interviewed. I'd also like to encourage you to work with Janelle. I can tell you firsthand, she's done amazing results for me. I highly endorse her. Sign up for some of her programs. Check out her website. Check out the programs that she has. We've kind of gone into some of them, but again, it was just scratching the surface here. I hope that you too did get some value out of this in terms of how can I be more happy and fulfilled, and realize how important emotions are, and not staying in those fear-based emotions, but going more to the higher energy ones of love and inner peace that we talked about. And there's more than just those two, but I didn't want this to turn into a 3-hour interview. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time.